We live in interesting times. Today's stories. Macron says he doesn't believe in people who build walls. In East Syria, civilians escape Islamic State but not death. Russian defense minister says Russia to develop new missiles by 2021. Venezuelan minister says the EU support for Guaido does not affect them. Erdogan criticizes the U.S. position on Venezuela. Measles cases rise, causing a state of emergency in Washington state. Protesters demand resignation of Virginia Governor Ralph Northam. Plus, the Church of Christ and the Pacific helps communities in the region. Hello everyone, I am Sarah Nachman bringing you stories from around the globe. And this is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. Speaking at a meeting with local officials in a Paris suburb, French President Emmanuel Macron says that building walls is not the solution in a world of migration. He has been holding a series of town hall meetings across the country to discuss the government's policy choices and challenges after weeks of protest over fuel prices and living standards by yellow vest demonstrators.
Nous sommes dans un monde de migration. Je ne crois pas du tout aux gens qui font des murs. Ça marche pas. Ça marche pas. C'est même pas par idéologie. On voudrait en faire que ça marcherait pas. D'ailleurs, nous, on se claquemurerait sévèrement.
A report said on Sunday President Emmanuel Macron is considering organizing what would be the first referendum in France in 14 years in May as part of his response to yellow vest protest. The Journal du Dimanche newspaper added to persistent rumors that Macron was preparing to call the vote on the same day as European Parliament elections on May 26. The newspaper reported on Sunday that the French would be asked whether they wanted to reduce the number of national lawmakers, a campaign pledge by Macron. They would also be asked whether they favored imposing a limit on the number of terms lawmakers could serve in a bid to prevent career politicians staying in power. Nathalie Loiseau, European Affairs Minister, told French media in an interview on Sunday, the President of the Republic doesn't exclude anything, but has yet taken a decision. Speaking to reporters last week, Macron was asked to comment on recent reports in the investigative newspaper Le Génération suggesting a referendum was being prepared. He said, "It's one of the things on the table." Macron has faced the biggest challenge of his 20-month presidency in recent months after violent protests over fuel prices and living standards by so-called yellow vest demonstrators. He followed up by organizing a great national debate, a series of town hall meetings which are underway across the country to discuss the government's policy choices and challenges. The referendum is seen as being a possible final act to include the debate, which would also serve as a response to the demands from the yellow vest for more direct democracy. Loiseau insisted it was premature to talk about a referendum while the debate was underway. It began in January 15 and is set to run for 2 months. In recent weeks, thousands have escaped the last pocket of land held by the Islamic State group near the Iraqi border, seeking refuge in territory held by U.S.-backed forces. Several say they were hit while attempting to flee into areas controlled by the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces.
طلعنا لما طلعنا قالوا لنا بعدين نسير الطريق واحنا جايين نزلنا وبعدين انقصفنا.
تموت الأطفال عم تموت، العالم عايشة بالشوارع، وضعهم كتير صعب. يعني العالم اللي عم تنضرب وتنقصف عم تقعد بالأرض على يعني لا تموت لا تنزف دمها وتموت وينشف دمها، يعني خلاص ما حدا بيساعدهم أبدا. اللي بينقصف وبيتصاب خلاص يعني بيضلوا بالأرض لا يموت.
The victims, mostly wounded by a bombardment more than a week ago, say they could not identify the source of the fire. After weeks of advancing steadily, the SDF halted their ground assault on IS's tiny remaining enclave last week, saying the jihadists were increasingly using civilians as human shields. But artillery fire by the SDF and airstrikes by the U.S.-led coalition continue to target the jihadists. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says more than 36,000 people, mostly women and children from jihadist families, have fled IS territory since the SDF and its coalition supporters intensified their offense against the jihadists in December. The Britain-based War Monitor says they also include some 3,200 jihadists. Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu says the country must develop new types of missile systems in the next 2 years after Washington and Moscow ripped up a key arms control treaty. The United States has repeatedly accused Russia of violating the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces or INF agreement, and on Friday, President Donald Trump said Washington was starting the process of withdrawing from the treaty in 6 months.
В течение 2019-2020 годов нам необходимо разработать наземный вариант комплекса «Калибр» морского базирования с крылатой ракетой большой дальности. В то же время они активно работают над созданием ракет наземного базирования с дальностью стрельбы более 500 километров, выходящие за пределы договорных ограничений. В связи с этим президент России поставил перед Министерством обороны задачу принять ответные зеркальные меры.
Venezuelan government supporters hold a rally in front of the country's foreign ministry, where a top diplomat dismisses the EU support for opposition leader Juan Guaido. Guaido has received backing from France, Germany, and the UK, as well as the US and Canada.
Hoy, apenas amanecimos, una seguidilla de pronunciamientos de Europa. Déjeme decirle que no nos sorprendió. Déjeme decirle que no nos afecta en lo absoluto.
International clamor for snap elections in Venezuela intensified Monday as European powers recognized opposition chief Juan Guaido as interim leader after President Nicolas Maduro rejected their ultimatum to call presidential polls. Spain, Britain, and France were among 15 EU nations to side with Guaido on Monday, but key Maduro ally Russia slammed European interference in the oil-rich but impoverished Latin American country, saying it was an attempt to legitimize usurped power. Guaido thanked each EU country in turn on Twitter, quote, for supporting all Venezuelans in the struggle we undertake to rescue our nation's democracy, freedom, and justice. Claiming his legitimacy from the Constitution, the 35-year-old National Assembly leader shocked the world when he proclaimed himself interim president on January 23, setting up a tense standoff with Maduro. Both men headed rival massive street rallies in Caracas on Saturday. Despite Guaido's pleas for their support, the armed forces, the country's key power, have remained loyal to Maduro. The opposition leader has expressed confidence he will win the backing of senior officers after a top Air Force general publicly sided with him on Saturday. Guaido is trying to force from power the socialist leader, labeled a dictator by the West and his Latin American neighbors, after presiding over Venezuela's economic collapse, aiming to set up a transitional government and hold new presidential elections. The U.S. and other countries have also pledged humanitarian aid for Guaido's administration, though it remains to be seen where and how it can enter the country without the military support. And it was unclear how he could fund and operate an interim presidency, with Maduro refusing to budge. Up next, Erdogan criticizes the U.S. position on Venezuela. Measles cases rise, causing a state of emergency in Washington state. Protesters demand resignation of Virginia Governor Ralph Northam. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. will return in a moment.
Eagle News teams are fair.
Sa impeachment complaint laban kay Supreme Court Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno, ang ilang maestra...
Ang rekomendasyon na makasuhan ang mga sangkot kasama na ang mga opisyal ng customs.
Hardworking.
Papaunlad ng isang bata na magiging isang future youth leaders.
Dedicated.
Sa nasawi ay dito natagpuan yung bangkay.
Ito yung kanilang paraan ng pag-aalaga ng mga may sakit na leprosy noong unang panahon.
Committed to public service.
Ang chairmanship ng ASEAN sa bansang Singapore.
Marami yung mga biktima ng mga nawawala. Ang ng Bureau of Customs na nasa merkado na yung mga pinaking produkto.
Sa kapila ng mga kilos protesta na nanatiling
dahil sa mabilis na pagresponde ng mga pamatay sunog, ang apoy mabilis na
karoon ng equal opportunity ang ibang mga kababaihan.
Ng mga kabataan at ipinakita sa pamagitan ng kanilang mga likha.
Nanatiling kulang pa rin ang tubig para sa irigasyon, para sa pagtatanim ng ating mga kababayang magsasaka.
As we live in interesting times.
Agila Balita, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 12 ng tanghali hanggang 1:00 ng hapon.
Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News, Washington, D.C. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Tuesday accused the European Union of seeking to overthrow embattled Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro in defiance of democracy.
Ya Venezuela senin eyaletin mi? Seçimle iş başına gelmiş bir insanı nasıl olur da burayı terk et git diyebilirsin? Ve seçime dahi girmemiş olana nasıl olur da sen o devletin başkanlığını teslim edersin? Hani demokrasi? Hani demokrattınız? Bu ne iştir? Böyle bir anlayış olabilir mi? Bunu kabullenmek mümkün mü?
Major European powers, including Britain, France, Germany, and Spain, on Monday recognized opposition leader Juan Guaido as interim president until new elections are held after Maduro rejected a European ultimatum to call fresh polls. The United States welcomed the recognition, with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo urging others to follow suit. Erdogan, whose government survived a coup bid in July 2016, has given support to Maduro in the wake of the crisis and told him in a phone call to stand tall. But Turkish backing for Maduro has drawn the ire of the United States, and a senior U.S. official said last week that Washington was disappointed with Ankara's move. A state of emergency was declared on Friday in the western U.S. state of Washington following a measles outbreak that has affected more than 24 people, the majority of them children. The disease was declared eliminated in the U.S. in 2000 but has since made a comeback that is tied to imported cases and the rise of anti-vaccine movement. Washington Governor Jay Inslee said in a statement, "Measles is a highly contagious infectious disease that can be fatal in small children. The existence of more than 26 confirmed cases in the state of Washington creates an extreme public health risk that may quickly spread to other countries." The outbreak began near Portland, Oregon at the start of the year and quickly spread to nearby Clark County and King County, both in Washington. Health officials have warned that people infected with the disease had visited schools, churches, a dentist office, a Costco store, an IKEA store, and the Portland airport.
Measles is incredibly contagious. You can be in a room. If you're susceptible, you can be in a room that somebody with measles left 2 hours earlier and still get the disease. If a person with measles meets a population that's unvaccinated, about 90% of folks are going to get the disease. If you have enough people who are vaccinated, it provides a cocoon so the vaccine can't meet anybody who can pass it on to anybody else. And that's what we define as herd immunity. We're well below that in the Pacific Northwest.
The impact of this current outbreak has been pretty significant in our area. Washington and Oregon tend to be somewhat of a region where we immunize less than other parts of the country, and we're seeing the effects of that. Certain populations have been exposed to the measles, and we've had a significant issue the last few weeks. And unfortunately, I hope I'm wrong, but I think the cases are going to get more frequent and spread throughout the country from this epicenter.
Officials said the majority of those infected are children, many of whom have not been immunized against the disease. They added the outbreak could still be in its infancy, as the incubation period of the virus averages 14 days. Those infected can spread measles to others 4 days before and 4 days after the rash appears. The highly contagious disease can cause severe diarrhea, pneumonia, and vision loss, and ultimately can be fatal.
4 of our 37 schools were impacted with potential measles cases. That's about 3,300 students, another 300 staff members that we had to ensure either had immunization or immunity from measles.
There is no single measles vaccine available, and so parents only have the choice between nothing or this very controversial, flawed MMR vaccine. And it's not for policymakers to try to make that decision for the parents. It's up to the parents to decide what risk they're willing to accept.
The World Health Organization in November warned that measles cases worldwide had jumped more than 30% in 2017 compared to the previous year, in part because of children not being vaccinated. In Virginia, protesters stand outside the Virginia governor's mansion demanding Ralph Northam resign over his alleged appearance in a racist 1984 yearbook photo. Northam changed his story Saturday about appearing in a said photo and insisted he will not resign from office. Northam held a press conference to say that he, in fact, was not one of the men in a photo from his university yearbook depicting two people, one in blackface and the other dressed in a Ku Klux Klan robe and hood. A day after saying he had appeared in the picture without specifying which of the individuals he was, he told reporters, quote, "In the hours since I made my statement yesterday, I reflected with my family and classmates from the time and affirmed my conclusion that I am not the person in that photo." Northam added that while he had not appeared in the photo, many actions that we rightfully recognize as abhorrent today were commonplace, and he was not surprised such material made its way to the yearbook. He said he did not know why it appeared on his page, adding, "I had nothing to do with the preparation of the yearbook, nor did I buy one." He said this was the first time he saw the photo and that it was shocking and horrific. The governor, who began his 4-year term in 2018, did admit, however, that he had applied shoe polish on his face on at least one occasion to imitate Michael Jackson during a dance contest held that same year, which he went on to win. He said he looks back now and regret that he did not understand the harmful legacy of an action like that. On Friday, the governor said in a statement soon after the picture surfaced, a website published a photograph from Northam's medical school yearbook in a costume that is clearly racist and offensive. Northam said he is deeply sorry for the decision he made to appear as he did in the photo and for the hurt that decision caused then and now. The admission prompted calls for him to resign, including from several Democratic presidential candidates. The Virginia branch of the Democratic Party said on Twitter Saturday, quote, "We made a decision to let Governor Northam do the correct thing and resign this morning. We have gotten word he will not do so this morning." Senator Cory Booker, an African-American 2020 presidential hopeful, was one of the first big-name Democrats to react. He tweeted Friday, quote, "These images arouse centuries of anger, anguish, and racist violence, and they've eroded all confidence in Governor Northam's ability to lead. We should expect more from our elected officials. He should resign." California Senator Kamala Harris, another African-American running for president, tweeted that the stain of racism should have no place in the halls of government. Other big-name Democrats such as Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren also called for his resignation. When we come back, the Church of Christ in the Pacific helps communities in the region. Eagle News Washington, D.C. will return shortly.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Agila Balita, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 12 ng tanghali hanggang 1:00 ng hapon.
This is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. I am Sarah Nackman. The Church of Christ Aid to Humanity through the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation continues. In the Pacific, several communities recently received help from the Church of Christ congregations across the region. Here are the reports from Mayo Acenas in Hawaii, Kelsey Oghayan in American Samoa, and Francesca Joy Miran in Palua.
Did you know, according to a recent study by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, an annual income of $40,000 for a single person living in Hawaii is now considered very low income, and a family of 4 with an annual income of $93,000 is still considered low income. Such hardship cannot be felt more than here in Waimanalo.
Located on the windward side of Oahu, Waimanalo is about a 30-minute drive from downtown Honolulu. It has a population of 10,000, with about half being Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. Despite having one of the most popular beaches in the state, Waimanalo is primarily an agricultural community.
Waimanalo is a fantastic country town. It's a great place to live and work. It has a small community there that shows a lot of aloha, good people. We all wave to each other and let each other in, and traffic. Big green mountains there, and beaches are close by. It's got a small country feel and has a great sense of community.
The boom of tourism in recent years also triggered an increase in the price of real estate and taxes, making it harder for local residents here to make ends meet.
Poverty in Hawaii. I've seen quite a bit of that in the small town of Kailua. It's a severe problem, and it's a very difficult thing to pass laws that are going to try and help these people. Sort of a grassroots effort. I know there's different groups that are trying to help them.
This is why the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ in Hawaii and around the world, together with the FYM Foundation, continues to host events such as Aid to Humanity to help fellow citizens in need, especially in areas with high costs of living or low job opportunities. For more on the Global Church's outreach efforts in the South Pacific, here's Felchi Orgayan.
Thank you, Mio. We spoke with the Church of Christ officials about the recent charity event, and they stressed that every little bit of help counts here in the South Pacific, where resources are always in short of supply.
The Church of Christ is doing this event, which is Aid to Humanity, because that is the command of our Almighty God which we are fulfilling. That we will help those who are poor and needy, even those who experience calamities, and also those who have problems when it comes to surviving. We help.
Thank you for everything. Thank you. Reporting from Pango in American Samoa, I am Felci Oghayan for Eagle News, and I am one with 25.
The Republic of Palau is located about 1,500 kilometers or 940 miles east of Mindanao Island in the Philippines. Even with a population of just under 22,000 people, and despite the reputable tourism industry, residents and even contract workers in this country continue to experience economic and financial hardships. In response to this dire situation, members of the Iglesia ni Cristo or Church of Christ in Corral, Palau, recently conducted their outreach event led by Brother Virginio Remilo II, a minister of the gospel who also supervises congregation throughout the Western Pacific. Guests like Balco expresses thanks for receiving some relief goods and encourage other organizations Palau to follow the efforts in helping those in need.
I would encourage it even more, and not only Iglesia ni Cristo, but all the churches need to join up forces and do it to alleviate the poverty and the need of Palauan people and the guests around coming to Palau. The poverty in Palau is there's so many people that are not working. The salary is so low, and the tax and the cost of living is just rising on a yearly basis, and the poverty will continue to rise as we go along. So we need some kind of relief.
That is why we continue to do acts of kindness to our fellow man, to reach out to them, be able to give them their needs. It may not be much, but then it's just our way of helping out to them. And so this evening we're able to hand out goods and reliefs to them.
Reporting from Corral, Palau, together with Mira Arseñas in Hawaii and Telchi Ogayon in American Samoa, I'm Francesca Generan. I'm 1 with 25.
Thank you, Mayo, Telci, and Francesca. That is today's Eagle News, Washington, D.C. Join us again tomorrow as we bring stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at Eaglenews.PH and Eaglenewslive.com. Follow us on Facebook.com/EagleNewsPH and on Twitter at Twitter.com/EagleNewsPH. On behalf of Eagle News, Washington, D.C., thank you for watching. I am Sarah Nachman, and I am 1 with 25.